there is not a direct term in Yoruba for she is having a baby. If someone's having a baby, we say we are having a baby. So if you learn the language, it translates into culture. So if you learn it. And so when you say
that's a bar.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Afronomics. We are glad to see you. Well, I guess you can't see us, but we can't see you, but you can see us.
Right.
We're glad to see you, and you're glad to see us. Welcome back. We have another guest here. I'm going to let Sita go ahead and introduce him.
Hey, what's going on? This is Sita. Here we have a very special guest, and we're in person today. We got Ade Oguntoye, and you can tell by the name that this is a strong Yoruba brother right here. So Ade's background has mostly been in philanthropy. He works with the Annie Casey Foundation, empowering youth. But what we want to talk about today is his work with the imperative, and that's dealing with people on the continent and then connecting and empowering Black people globally. So let's go ahead and just want to get you to talk a little bit about yourself. I gave a brief introduction, but let the people know who you are and what you do.
Well, greetings, everybody. My name is Ade Oguntoye. You said the name right, so that's step one.
He practiced.
I did, for sure.
I can tell he practiced.
Well, that didn't happen a lot growing up.
I feel your pain.
First day of school, it was like, man, when the teacher was getting to the O's, you were like,
it's like, I'm gonna stop you right there. As soon as they start saying.
Yeah. So
from my own knowledge, can you say what your full name means? You said the first name, which is dope.
My full name is Adeoti Aramide Adetunji Oguntoye. So Adeoti means descendant from royalty, and Ogun is one of the Orishas in Yoruba culture. So, before British colonization, people didn't really have first and last names the way they do now. People were named after the day of the week they were born, how they were born, different things like that. But the British required certain things, and so, that's where you start to get these different kind of family names and things of that nature. I grew up, I was born in Atlanta. My parents are from Nigeria, from a place called Kwara State. Born and raised here in Atlanta, went to college here at Emory, went to grad school in New York at Columbia, and moved back to Atlanta. And so I've just been doing work around social, my degree's in social work. So I've been doing things around social work, and connecting Black people. My overall mission in life is to improve outcomes for Black people.
Nice.
So
love it.
That's who it is.
Hey.
That's who I am. So.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. You in Atlanta, the perfect place to do that.
Right.
African, perfect person to do that. So yeah.
Now I want to get into the imperative. Can you give a brief overview of what that is, and then we'll get into some questions and just follow up about that.
Sure.
Oh, wait.
I was gonna say, you skipping the
Oh,
most
my
important
bad.
part.
I am
of the
tripping.
day.
I'm tripping. So we got a segment. Yeah, we got a segment that we start off every episode with called Wala. All right, and the whole point of the segment is like lighthearted. We talk about just whatever. It's a random topic every single time, and it's not very serious. But we do that before we get into the actual, nitty gritty of the interview. All right, so the topic today, and I asked you something before we started the interview because I was like, that's imperative before we can actually do this wild topic. So the question is.
Oh, you don't know what
I don't know what it is.
I definitely don't know what it is.
He doesn't know. So I come up with these just on my own and then just kind of spring them on him last minute. So he's just as surprised as you are. All right, so the question for today is, would you rather have to eat rice every single day for the rest of your life or never be able to eat rice again?
Oh man, that's an easy question. I'm gonna eat rice every day.
Every single
That's a
day.
given.
Every single day.
I mean, I couldn't imagine life without jollof rice. I mean,
Really?
Yeah.
You mean Liberian jollof rice?
Let's not start
I
that.
think
why would you want to go the
not-
rest of your life eating Nigerian jollof rice? That's a punishment.
Because that's the winning jollof rice, man.
I would.
mean,
No,
winning-
that sounds like torture.
the winning. I mean, so let's
Jollof wars is happening.
a jollof
I
war.
think-
I mean, I think y'all call it a jollof war Because it's not a war. It's already over.
Oh, this guy is brutal.
That's crazy.
What?
That's wild.
Okay.
Y'all do have good jollof rice, though. No doubt.
We have superior jollof rice.
It's the same for you?
No.
You-
I don't care about rice. Give me fufu all day.
Really?
Fufu.
So you would never eat rice again? As an African, a West African, you'll never eat rice again?
Let me just say this, and I'm probably going to, Liberian people, please, I beg you, forgive me.
You're going to get canceled.
I'm probably going to get canceled because they literally had a whole war over rice. But I eat fufu with things that don't belong with fufu because I like fufu that much. I will make fufu at the crib just to eat fufu by itself. That's how much.
What?
No stew.
No, just give me dry fufu.
Wow.
Like even when I make fufu to eat with soup, I make extra to eat because I know I'm gonna eat it like while I'm
Yeah, this is Wahala.
True.
Nah, I mean rice is cool. Don't get me wrong.
psychopathic.
I love rice. Rice is great.
That's
But if
psychopathic.
rice is a 9.5, fufu's a 14.
Fufu, I've never met anybody. This is
And
I'm
in
a
Liberia,
real
we have
fu- I
something
eat
called
fufu.
dumba, and it's like fufu on steroids, and it's even better. I will eat that all
Fufu
day.
on steroids.
It's
what does that
amazing.
mean?
I forgot. I think it's
Probably has
dumba. I think it's cassava. I don't know what it is, but it's some stuff, and it's like fufu, but it's sweet. I don't know. Bro.
I can't
It's
get
just-
over the fact you eat fufu by itself. I'm finding out something about you, dude. That's
Fufu is wonderful.
fufu by itself.
You never ate rice by itself?
No.
Oh, maybe I'm
It's
the
like
person.
eating a tortilla with no meat, no cheese.
Yes,
Like
I do that too.
Man, so you just on some stuff.
Oh, maybe I'm the problem.
Yeah, yeah.
Y'all don't do that?
No.
We're not questioning. Yes, you're the problem.
Oh, okay.
No thanks.
I'm not changing, but it's
I'll
okay.
eat rice every day.
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
with you.
all right.
Okay,
We can continue the interview if that's the case. 'Cause I
Right.
don't know if-
Yeah, we can keep going. We just
All I'm
between
saying
you and me.
is fufu is superior.
I mean,
People
love fufu.
And if one must eat rice, it should be Liberian rice.
fufu by itself, that is
wow.
damn.
I'll just have some water on
That's
that one.
eye opening. Like,
Y'all don't eat fufu
like that
by
cannot
itself?
be an answer. No. no.
Hey, look, if y'all eat fufu, anybody, if you're watching, somebody, please, I beg, help me. If anybody eats fufu by themselves, please go ahead and put in the comments something. I need some
You
support.
trying to find your tribe?
Yes, finding my
The-
tribe,
the
please.
other
I beg.
crazies.
Any country, doesn't matter where you're from. If you eat fufu by itself, please help
I
me.
wonder, is it possible for posts to have negative comments?
Just
like negative
like
likes?
thumbs down. Just you trying to drive this down. They're gonna take it. They're gonna take it off of YouTube. They're not even gonna post this no more.
Yeah, I eat tortillas by
Ridiculous.
itself too,
Wow.
and rice.
For what?
Yeah, that needs to be studied.
Yeah.
That's
That's
like
just straight carbs. Yeah.
Heavy.
I eat bread by itself too. I didn't put butter on bread until I was like 30.
All right, bro.
Okay.
Your stomach, your diet, your
Carbs
taste
are
in
great.
food. Anyway, moving on. It's imperative we get off this topic.
There we go. There we go.
All right. Speaking of imperative, let's go ahead and get into it. Just want to hear. You told me some things that I was like, yeah, no, that's pretty cool. So wanted to make sure we got you on so we can expose people to what you're doing and how they can tap in.
Yeah, so the imperative, so I work in philanthropy, and I was selected to a fellowship by the Association of Black Foundation Executives. And we had to do a project for that fellowship, and me and the co-founder, who's a Haitian, her parents are from Haiti, we decided to create a fund. We both thought there needed to be a standalone fund that's focused on Black people at all times. When it's cool to, when it's not cool to, the issues are always there, the data hasn't changed. So we started it, working on it in 2019. And we came up with, actually she came up with the name, her name is Alexandra Bastian. She came up with the name The Imperative, and we kind of worked together on the mission, which is to improve the wealth, health, and connectedness of Black people globally.
Dope.
And so we, in 2020, we fully incorporated, so it's been about 4 years. And so we have an office here, we have an office in the UK, and we've been doing, primarily we've been doing a lot of work in Kenya. The first grant that we gave was to work on the creation of a Swahili language project. So a curriculum focused on Swahili. We work with the University of Nairobi, the National Museums of Kenya, and they created this curriculum. we brought the curriculum to Atlanta. Atlanta Public Schools said they were interested in it. They took it to the state, and then about 2 years ago, the state approved it. So it's actually the first indigenous African language that can be taken for credit here in the state of Georgia.
Nice.
Wait.
Nice.
So any person anywhere in the state of Georgia can take Swahili for credit for the two years of foreign language that you need to take.
Dog, we got to pause on that. We can't just, that's monumental.
Nah, yeah,
That's
huge.
that's not a small accomplishment.
Well, I mean, so I think part of the reason why we formed the philanthropy was just to show the world of philanthropy that when you actually are intentional about focusing on Black people, that you come up with different outcomes.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people focus on improving educational outcomes for people in Georgia, for people throughout the country. But the fact that there's not an indigenous African language that can be taken for credit in the state, in the history, means that all the billions of dollars that have gone into education in Georgia over the years is not centering the interests of Black people. So we did this with about $50,000. You know, it wasn't like we, spent millions of dollars on this. And so we can show that when you actually think about and care about the interests of Black people, these are things you can produce. And I'll say the reason Atlanta Public Schools was interested, we didn't have to make a strong, we thought we were going to have to go in and be like, and this is reason why you need to do it, and this and this. All we said was it's the most widely spoken indigenous African language. And they were like, oh, no, we want to prepare our children for the future. Africa is the future. Of course we're going to do this. So,
Yeah.
And so one of the things we talk about all the time on the show is bridging the gap and building that. And this was a conversation that we've had before too, with language being a major barrier. And we just had this conversation too about even us trying to make sure that we're keeping up and catching up with the languages of our own cultures. And so building that bridge is with Swahili. I know language is a major thing for some Americans to say, well, I want to explore Africa, but I don't know where to start or whatever. It gives them a reason. It gives them an excuse. Like, yo, I can confidently go over there and say, I know how to speak this language. Like me, I speak some Spanish. So I can go to any Spanish-speaking country and feel confident while I'm in there that I know how to get around and communicate. That's why I say what you're doing is so monumental, because this is literally going to change generations.
Yeah. I mean, that's the goal. I mean, we, part of the reason why we did language and focus on language was a couple of things. One, unfortunately, a lot of times when people of African descent go home, sometimes we travel as Americans, and I say that with all due respect, but we travel expecting to see Walmart and McDonald's and everyone to be able to speak our language, speak English, and it separates us from a lot of the indigenous population that only speaks the indigenous language. So I think it's important that we come as Black people when we go back to the continent. We don't come as visitors, we come as people returning home, and there's a difference there. The other reason why I think it's important is a lot of traditional and indigenous African languages we're losing them. And part of the reason we're losing them is because they don't create new words. So there's no word in Swahili for social media, for example. So you just use the English word, and so you start using the English words around it. And so as a result, you see a deterioration of indigenous African language. So it's important that there's this dialogue between Black people abroad and indigenous people to preserve the language. So yeah, it's
even add to it.
And add to it. So on both fronts, it's not just us learning the language, but us having a conversation with people.
And I want to highlight something you said in the beginning, where you said you created the imperative to support and connect Black people globally when it's cool, when it's not cool. And I think that's incredibly important, because we see, and it's actually shortly after you guys started 2020, there was the whole awakening, George Floyd and all that. And around that time, it became incredibly popular to support Black causes. And there was a lot of money going into it from all these major corporations. And what we see, and it happens time and time again, support for Black people and support for Black lives is it's a fad. It's a buzzword. It's something that's in style. And then at some point, the momentum dies down, and then all of the resources that went into it starts falling off. And then now we're back where we were pre-pandemic and all of that. So when you have a fund that, regardless of what's going on, is going to be supporting us, that's something that's important. We need stuff like that to be, just evergreen. It needs to keep going. And then language, as your point, is so powerful, and it's a way for us to connect. So, can you tell me this, just the significance of Swahili and why people are really pushing that? Because
Yeah.
I've heard multiple times about, like, if you're gonna learn an African language, let it be Swahili. Like, why is that?
Yeah, I mean, and just quickly, when you talked about all the kind of dollars that were talked about after George Floyd was murdered, and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery
Yeah.
and Rayshard Brooks and the many
The
others.
name,
Yeah.
the
The
list
name,
goes
yeah.
on.
The list goes on.
So they were pledges. So a lot of those pledges were never fulfilled.
Mm.
So people made pledges because it was
Popular to do.
popular,
Yeah.
it's politically expedient, but they never fulfilled those pledges. The vast majority of those pledges were never fulfilled. But language, so I'm Yoruba, as we talked about before. And when I ask Yoruba people if we need to speak one language on the continent, what language should it be? They say Swahili.
Mm.
And Yoruba people are very proud people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
We're very, very
yeah.
proud people. But Swahili is what they call the lingua franca of the
Yeah.
continent. It's the common language. It's spoken by approximately 200 million people.
Mm.
And most people know Swahili words, because of things like Kwanzaa, or even
Yeah.
watching The Lion King, like Simba. Simba
Yeah.
means lion in Swahili.
Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna Matata means no, so people know and have heard Swahili phrases, even if they don't know that they're Swahili words and phrases. So the UN, working on the UN making it an official language, because once the UN makes it official language, that's what people will teach in school. But it is, it's more widely spoken than Yoruba. It's more widely spoken than Zulu, than,
Yeah.
than any of the other languages. So I think it's a way for us to unify and at least say this is a bridge language
Yeah.
between Black people all over the world.
Yeah.
And people didn't realize that. So we did some trivia, as a way to promote the podcast at InvestFest. One of the questions that was asked was, "What's the most widely spoken language in Africa?" Most people were getting it wrong. A lot of people were thinking it was English or French, the European language. A couple people said some of the Nigerian languages. Nobody really thought Swahili. And yeah.
And one of the people that we work with on the language curriculum is the head of the Swahili department at the University of Nairobi. So he's like the foremost speaker of Swahili in the world. And one of the things that he brought up that I think is really important to bring up, because some people will say, well, Swahili is a language that's created by Arabs, and it's a slave trading language. What he brings up all the time is that Swahili predates the Arab invasion, so it is actually older than. So it is a true indigenous African language.
Wow.
So that's really important to know, that it's not a language of colonization, but it's a language of the people.
Okay. No, that's very
very important to know.
Right.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. You said the UN needed to make it an official language. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I thought Swahili was an official.
No, so I think
language.
there's 7 official UN languages, and none of them are indigenous African languages. So it's English, French, I think German, Spanish, Mandarin, and maybe Portuguese. I think there's maybe 6, and we want.
So something from every continent except Africa.
Of course. Well, I mean, we go back far enough. We know.
Yeah,
we know the history.
Americans
Yeah.
aren't,
Yeah. So
That's crazy.
So, what was it? Maybe 2 years ago, UNICEF or UNESCO declared World Kiswahili Day, and so that was the attempt to say that this is a language that needs to be elevated and celebrated every year. So there's a pathway, we think, to making it the 7th official language. Because you think about the languages I mentioned, that's what they teach in school.
Yeah.
That's true.
So if it is an official UN language, that means it is a language that all the documents have to be translated into. It means it's a language that you can conduct business in. And so I think it's very important that happens.
Yeah.
Just for the recognition and the sustainability of the language.
No, that's big. That's big. And outside of what you're doing with Swahili, can you speak more about? I know you do some stuff regarding art, and there's some work you've been trying to do as far as preserving the culture of Black people, and that's one of the ways that we're talking about reparations. We talk about it financially. We talk about the economics, but you mentioned even art as a way of reparations.
So one of the conferences that so we put on a couple of conferences in Kenya also, and we have another one coming up in December in Mombasa. And the three topics of the conference are climate change and addressing the impact of climate change on people of African descent, civil governance, so making sure our countries operate the way they need to operate, and then the third is reparations. And that reparations comes in many forms, but one of the things that we've been focusing on in the context, because we work with the National Museums of Kenya, is the return of artifacts. You know, and this is a very interesting time. I mean, the Benin bronze being returned is something that, you know, we're hearing about more recently. But here's I have a trivia question for you all.
Okay.
See if y'all can answer this. Do you know the reason why we don't see a lot of mummies around?
Oh, they were. So I have two answers. I think one of them, based on what I remember, I think it's a mixture of like grave robbing, and they were eaten.
Absolutely, you got it. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah,
So,
I didn't, because you told me that already, so I ain't want to.
yeah. So I mean, the Europeans ground up our ancestors and ate them because they thought it was medicine. I mean, I think we need to sit with that for a moment.
Did they know they were human beings? Though?
Yeah. They ground them up and they said, well, they knew because, you know, despite what they tell us about, you know, what they try and portray about us, they knew that we were the ones that were advanced in science and medicine. So they said they must know something we don't know. They're able to preserve their ancestors for thousands of years. We can't do that. So there must be some magic in them. And so you look at some of the medicine books from Europe and they're like, you know, 2 teaspoons of ground, you know.
Oh my God.
And so
That's insanity.
Yeah. So when we talk about savages and cannibalism and all that stuff, like we really have to get the history straight. But I say that to say part of the dialogue around why these European countries and the United States don't want to return the artifacts is because they say that African people we don't have the ability to care for them. And I'm like, we're not grounding up our ancestors. So, I mean, you know, I think we have to be, once we know our history, we can combat some of the narratives that are out there. And so culture is life. Like, I mean, you know, can you imagine? I mean, we couldn't even imagine digging up the bones of George Washington and taking them to Nigeria on display. But that's what we see when we go into museums all over the world. So, yeah, I mean, it can go. We can get really deep. If we want.
I mean, and that's when you first started talking about getting our artifacts back, the first thing that came to mind was Black Panther. And when I saw him do that, I was like, he's actually not wrong. Because like, what is to stop us from going into a museum and saying, nah? Like, if this is my tribe, like let's say if you were to go into a museum and say this is a Yoruba artifact, why can't you just take it? It's yours. It's literally your property that they stole and took over there. I know that I think it was India or some country, they like demanded that the British give them back their stuff, and they won their artifacts back. And I think that's something that we need to start doing. And back to the conversation about Swahili and languages, I love that it's a thing. My only concern is that, and this is probably just the Afrocentrism in me. My only concern is that if it's a language that's taught to everybody, then they have access to what we're saying and doing. And so it gives them more access to us to do more harm if they desire, rather than us being able to speak to one another and do what we need to do to build ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely hear you on that. You know, here's my kind of response to it. There is not a direct term in Yoruba for she is having a baby. If someone's having a baby, we say we are having a baby. So if you learn the language, it translates into culture. So if you learn it. And so when you say
that's a bar.
Wait, say it one more time.
So when you say we are having a baby, that means that we are responsible for the learning, the protection of this child. And so we can't allow, that's why language is so powerful.
Yeah.
That's why when you call someone a slave versus an enslaved African, those are two different things.
Two different things.
Yeah. And so, yes, I hear you. And we also will transmit culture and cultural practices and values by learning the language, and that's going to be a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected. Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate
no.
that because
It's
that
a
was
different perspective,
that was
but
my
I
thought.
get you.
That
Makes
was definitely
sense.
my thought, and I'm sure somebody else might have been thinking the
No,
same
no,
thing.
yeah,
So
true.
that's
Yeah,
helpful
no, it's good
because
to bring it up.
even last year, was it last year, 2 years ago, Mayor Dickens had his town hall where he was talking about the year of the youth, and he mentioned an African greeting. I don't know if it was Swahili or not, but he said like they say how are the to talk about how they say how are the children, and the response is all the children are well, and the overall idea is that if the children in the village are doing well, then the health of the village is doing well as well. So saying that to say in how we talk and language and things like that, I guess it's in us as Africans to be universal and to be community oriented. So actually learning Swahili for the world might actually bring
I hope so.
generations into the future,
Yeah.
but it might actually bring some settlement and some peace if people were to actually adopt the ideas of it. I'm an
They
idealist in a
won't.
lot of ways. They won't. I'm an
They won't.
idealist. I can be an idealist sometimes. So
Yeah.
that's just a in a
no.
perfect world. But
Never underestimate their
some or
ability
they
to
might
flip
even
and-
try to change it to make it fit their
Yeah,
own stuff. But
Yeah,
you know, we hope for the best.
They'll have Brad Pitt starring a movie.
Right.
Brad Pitt by Swahili too.
Yeah, no. And what you were saying about like just the art and the history and how we kind of taught them. They knew that we had civilization. They knew that because like a lot of people don't understand the history. We're taught in school, especially in America, that our history started in chains and slavery like that. They don't really tell us that we created civilization. They don't tell you about Kemet or the Moors and all of that. That we invited these people in. It's really our downfall. We invited people in because we were so advanced. We invited other groups in and they learned it and then used that against us. They weaponized our own learnings, our own discoveries against us. Now, as far as this may not be part of the scope of the imperative, but how do we, as we share and try to unify ourselves and try to make sure we get informed and get on the same code, how do we protect ourselves, in your opinion, from groups doing the same thing as we're trying to disseminate information?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a saying by Dr. King. We're in Atlanta. I was born in Atlanta. So, you know, I think for me growing up, Dr. King was like a double-edged sword. I mean, when I was very young, I was like, man, this dude was dope. When I got older, I was like, man, he was soft. You know, I'm a
Yeah.
Malcolm X. Like, we need to be
Yeah.
militant, and we need to make sure that we are, you know, by any means necessary. And then as I got older, I was like, they gave me a sanitized version of King.
Yeah.
And so there's two King sayings that I think are very kind of pivotal to this. One is a speech that he gave at Riverside Church exactly a year before he was assassinated. And when I heard that speech, I was like, man, because I always wondered why they killed this man, because he was just talking about peace. But there's a line in there that he says, I fear I have integrated my people into a burning house. And I was just like, wow. He had been doing all this, like bringing people together. He's like, whoa, what am I doing? Like, I fear I have integrated my people into a burning house. So, you know, the idea of being cautious is very, very important. There's another saying that he said that, you know, is one that sticks with me. And he says that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. It's not a passive bending towards justice. Like, we got to yank that thing down.
Yeah, yeah.
And so if I truly believe that, then I believe that regardless of what people have in store for us, regardless of what people's plans are for us, we're going to get to where we need to get to.
Yeah.
We've shown it. I mean,
Yeah.
any other group that went through what we went through during chattel slavery would have been wiped off the face of the earth. The fact that we can sit here and be as strong as we are means that there's something inside of us. There's something that is meant for us that regardless of what other people are trying to do to us, they won't succeed. So the question of how do we protect ourselves, you know, I think, you know, we can look backwards at that. We can look back and say, how did our ancestors protect themselves? Because the narratives that they tell about us is we sat on plantations and just waited. That ain't true. There's something called Freedom on the Move that Cornell University put together that is a compilation of thousands of articles that were in the paper from people saying enslaved people have run away. And so what that means to me is that every single day we were fighting. We've always fought, and we will continue to fight. So yes, they got plans for us, but we will succeed. So that's just the way I look at it.
Yeah. Nah, that brings up one of my favorite quotes is an African proverb. It says if there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm.
Exactly.
So it's like they're always gonna be against us. They're always gonna be out to get us. They're always gonna be trying to exploit us. But as long as we work together and we understand that we have the power, then we'll be able to push through and be able to do what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
and I think it's also if we focus on ourselves and building ourselves and doing well for ourselves, we will move, as you said, we will move forward. But just the idea of making sure that we're prepared for whatever crap you want to bring to us, but we're also not focusing on that at the same time. And I think that's important. That's why even like having the inner unity between us. This is why I probably say this on every episode at this point. It's a broken record, but the unity is very, very, very important. I always say I'm Black American and I'm African. I'm literally an African American. I love both sides equally. And it hurts my heart to see that both sides don't really know each other and love each other as equally. Because if we did, we would be it's too much.
So,
it's too much.
So
it's powerful.
I know I didn't share this with you, but one of the things I spoke at the World Conference Against Racism for African diaspora that was in Barbados. This was after the conference they had in Durban, and I presented on the topic. I think I was maybe 23 or 24 at the time, and so I was asked to come speak, and I was like, "What you mean speak in front of an international conference? It's like 5,000 people here." And they're like, "No, you got to talk." So what I presented on was this idea of creating a Pan-African Olympic team. So this was, imagine the Summer Olympics. Like, we won. That's it. It's over with, right? And so part of that was to really have us think about, because when you look at all these totals, you see the United States on top, you see this country on top.
France.
And like all the people are Black. So I think that it's, that is a sign of unity and showing that regardless of how we were colonized and enslaved, we still are on top. Like if you take us collectively. So I think it's really important for us to be unified. And so, that's really the key. The key is not trying to, fight the enemy without. It really is like us coming together, because if our backs aren't bent, then you can't stand on it.
Exactly.
If our shoulders aren't bent, you can't stand on it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about the foundation, the fund that you have. I come from nonprofit world. That's been most of my career, so I know the hustle and grind of fundraising and all of that. Especially, I started a nonprofit during the pandemic, so I was one of those. We were one of those people who received pledges. Didn't always come through. So I understand that. So can you talk a little bit more about the work that you do with the foundation?
Yeah, so we I mentioned those three pillars: wealth, health, and connectedness. When you think about wealth, Alexandria always says we are the wealth. So we're not thinking about just kind of paper wealth, but land, but culture, all those different pieces. When we think about health, we're thinking about mental health. We're thinking about physical health, spiritual health, emotional health. And when we think about connectedness, it's unity and unification. And so we center the interest of Black people in the way that we give. So we gave money to a project in Brazil that's teaching Afro-Brazilians how to preserve their culture. We gave money to a group of people actually here in Atlanta that is working on Black male mental health.
Wow.
So when we think about how we give, it's not that we're just giving the same way that other people give. Our explicit interest is we want to center the interest of Black people. So whatever dollars we give, somebody giving $1 million for a project and us giving $10,000 on a project, we can produce better outcomes because our interest is how is this improving outcomes for Black people. And so we're intentional about how we do it. We give a lot of general operating support, which means we trust Black leaders in doing what they need to do, as opposed to us saying, we're going to give you money to do this very specific thing.
Restricted funding.
And so that, is not what we need, because you can give people a whole bunch of money to do very specific things, not have enough money for staffing, and then we wonder why the project fails.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we trust Black leaders. So I think that's the other thing too, is we trust Black leaders.
Yeah. And how are you guys making those selections on, like, is there an application process, and what do you guys typically, what kind of separates one project to say, yeah, we really need to fund that?
Yeah, I mean, we're small. We're small. We've raised like just under $1 million. So as it relates to a fund, we're very small. We have some really good partners. Part of it was, Alexandria and I both worked in philanthropy, so we both had some ideas of things we wanted to support, like the Swahili language program. And then the other part of it is participatory grant making. So the project that I mentioned on Black male mental health, there's a group of 12 young Black men who went through a healing journey before they decided on they're making a decision now on where the grants go. So they actually, started their healing journey and then did like an asset map of Atlanta and said, what organizations are there out there that care about the interests of Black men? So they compiled that list and they're going to ask them to submit an application. So there's different ways that we do it. That's participatory. That's the people that are intended to receive the benefit actually making the decisions on the actual where the grant goes. So some of it is us going out there and finding people, and the other is, us really bringing the experts.
Yeah.
We the experts, right?
Yeah,
Bringing the experts together to say, what should we be doing?
And the flip side to that, how are you guys raising funds? Because I think that's usually a big driver, because whoever controls the purse is controlling the whole outcome.
Yeah.
So like, you got to make sure that your funding is in alignment with your mission.
Absolutely. So a couple of ways. One, anyone can go to our website and make a donation. So we have people that give money every month.
And that website is
theImperativefund.org.
Okay.
TheImperativefund.org. So people can make donations, and they do. We've also received some money from some foundations. A lot of that money has been general operating. So when we talk to people about giving money, we're clear. Like, this is our mission. And if you are supportive of that mission and you trust Black leaders, then this is the way that we should work together. So so it's been those two ways, both individuals giving and then also foundations giving.
Yeah.
And in kind, what we call in kind donation.
Yeah.
So our place that we are, our office in the UK, that's in kind. That's with the Global Fund for Children. So
Nice. And you see the opposite of that happening in Africa. I think a lot of, like, China, of course, has a huge presence in Africa. A lot of these countries, Lebanon, Europe, they go in with their money and they say the exact opposite. Do this. And then you got these leaders that want the money, say like, all right, we'll do this. They acquiesce, as opposed to they're not doing anything that's really going to help them. They're not going to benefit them. It's going to benefit whoever's providing the funds more than anything. And then I think it's to your point, like, understanding Black wealth is not just about money. I think we overvalue money. Money is a currency which has a place with human capital, creativity, ideas, network. Those are all forms of currency. If you learn to leverage and appreciate, then you're not going to jump at the smallest amount of money to get you ahead. I think it's very short term.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, it's important here to talk about, because there's a lot of critique of African leaders, and we definitely should critique African leaders.
Yeah.
But I think we have to put it in context. The United States got its independence in 1776.
Yeah.
About 90 years later, they had a tribal war that they call a civil war between the North and the South, where they almost destroyed the country. And it took another 100 years after that to give rights to everybody. So it took 200 years in this land of the free and home of the brave for everybody to actually on paper have the rights to vote.
Yeah.
A lot of the African nations that we're talking about have had their independence for 30, 40, 50 years.
That's true.
So we have to put it in this context. And for the most part, all of the African leaders that are running the nations right now were born under colonization. All of them. There's not a born free generation of people that have not known colonization. So what does that do to somebody when you've been born under subjugation, to ask you to now rule in a free, I'm gonna just take it here just because, we family now,
Yeah,
right?
we here.
So let's think about like the Moses narrative when he's marching around this mountain for 40 years. It wasn't just because they're being punished by God. It's because he knew he couldn't take slave people to rule in a free land.
It's real.
So part of that story is telling us that we need to actually, it's going to be that born free generation that takes us to the next place. But that's not what we're seeing in South Africa. That's not what we're seeing in Nigeria. That's not what we're seeing. All of them are people that were born under colonization. It's going to take some time.
And then when we do have good leaders, the West
they're assassinated. Patrice Lumumba,
Thomas Sankara.
Yeah.
That's a part of the problem, because we do have there have been, like, Liberia had a great leader for a long time, and then civil war and things like that happened. There's talks that civil war was
we know
incited by folks that weren't Liberian, but we'll leave that alone.
Yeah.
And so things like that are what happened as well. Not only are they the product of colonization, the ones who are the good ones, they get demonized, because unfortunately Africa is still, I think, at its core of who we are as far as our character. We're still a people who we're not violent out here trying to imperialize the world and take over stuff and do all that kind of thing. That's just not who we are. That's not in our character. But you have countries that are like that are stronger than us, and so anytime they see us moving forward, their agenda is, hey, let me come in and get what I can get at the expense of whoever's there.
Well, I wouldn't even say they're stronger. They might be more unified.
That's the biggest
Well, when I
thing.
say stronger, I'm
I know what you mean.
specifically talking about military.
Yeah, military.
Yeah, military.
So one of our initial board members for the Imperative is Josina Machel. Her father was Samor Machel, the first democratically elected president of Mozambique.
Wow.
His plane went down in what many think was an assassination, and her mother remarried Nelson Mandela. So she grew up in Mandela's household. One of the things that Mandela said that was really, really telling, and the thing about Mandela, so the Zulus are warriors, right? So what Mandela went to jail for, he did. He was trying to blow up buildings, and so he was a warrior. But one of the things that Mandela said when he came out, he was being interviewed. I think it was by Ted Koppel or something, and he was saying, Mr. Mandela, President Mandela, your friends are Yasser Arafat, Muammar Gaddafi, Fidel Castro. How can these people be your friends? And Mandela's response, which I think is one of the most brilliant responses ever, he said, you're making the classic mistake of thinking your enemy should be my enemy. He said that we are an independent country and we will judge our relationships based on how they treated us.
Yeah.
And so, yes, they demonized Gaddafi, but Gaddafi was putting up satellites, telecommunication satellites. Liberia, when I went to Liberia, I saw a whole bunch of buildings that Gaddafi helped to finance. In Nigeria, same thing. So I think it is important that we claim who our heroes are, because if we let other people, tell us that, Denmark Vesey was a villain, or that, Patrice Lumumba or Steve, these are our heroes.
Yeah.
And so I think that's important. We don't allow people to, demonize a Ronald Reagan, and he said some horrible things. He was a proponent of apartheid in South Africa. So I think it's important that we control our own narratives.
Yeah.
That's power too.
It's like the African proverb, what's it called? Until the lion.
As a historian, hunters will always be heroes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Man. I think we gotta close it out, but we always have one last question that we ask every guest. Go ahead.
Yeah. So
Is it about rice and fufu again?
no, I don't want to bring that up again, because I don't want to hear his tape
Again, please comment. Fufu. If we family, please.
Yeah, no, we gotta talk about that. Man.
No, we don't. I win.
We really
I'm
gotta
right
talk.
here.
After the interview, we gotta rethink some things. But the question that we have is, for anybody that's taking their first trip to Africa, what's one experience, sight to see? What's one thing that they should do on that trip to get a good experience?
So what I tell people is to go empty. Wherever you go empty. Don't go with expectations of, I'm going to go and as soon as I step on the soil, it's going to be Wakanda forever. Or, people are going to embrace me in a certain way, or it's going to look like this or feel like that. Go empty. and be filled up by the experience that you have there. So wherever you are, wherever you're going, go with that mentality that I'm here to be filled up by what the continent has to offer. And I think in that way, you'll return full, not of yourself, but
Yeah.
full of the country, full of the continent.
That's a great way.
Hey, if that was a mic drop reason, go ahead.
Well, you already said the website, but is there any other information, contact info, social media, anything for the Imperative?
Yeah, there's all that stuff. I think I'll send it to you all, and y'all can put it on the
Okay, all
on the
right, we'll
thing
do
after. But if you go to theimperativeFund.org, you'll see
Okay.
all of our social media ways to get in contact with us. We have Twitter, or what is it called, X now, whatever it's called, and IG and all the things. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Man. Well, Ade, thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for the conversation. Yeah, this is really empowering, and I think it's a very needed conversation. So we appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you all. I mean, what you all are doing is really, really important. I mean, I think a lot of people talk about, unification, but y'all are doing something about it. Y'all are creating a platform where people can come together. So I appreciate both of you all.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you. All right, fam. This is not the last episode at all, but this is we're done for today. Welcome. Oh Lord, Caesar, you do it, brother.
Watch me screw it up too. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, and then tune in next week. We got more heat for you.